Toronto FC Pitchside episode 3, and we've already got video capabilities. I'm Marco D'Onofrio.
We're going too fast at this. I'm Dan Riccio.
Moving on up, we got producer Boz. We spoke to Clément Simonin. Is that how I say it? You say it so much better than I.
Clément Simonin.
There you go with the French accent.
Yeah, we're on Canadian. You gotta get that little French Canadian in you.
I don't know how your French teacher was, but mine was terrible.
I do the same with every language. Like if it's Italian, it's Nutella, not just Nutella.
But Clément made his debut, Major League Soccer debut, in Sandy, Utah against Real Salt Lake, and didn't look that bad, to be honest with you.
No, he looked great, and we talked about it on the last episode, how he had 62 touches and led the team as a defender, and that's kind of the reason Greg Vanney likes him so much and is so high on him. And I think that's a big part of what TFC is looking forward to, is having that ball-playing defender coming out of the back and really starting the offense that way. I think on the goal that Jackson scored, I think about 10 TFC passes were made on that one goal. So that's something you never really saw under Ryan Nelson, and something I don't really recall happening all too often in the history of Toronto FC. So that's a big step for TFC to make those passes and complete them and see it result in a goal, because that's kind of the future of what they want and what they want under Greg Vanney.
Now, we just heard Greg Vanney say that Caldwell is out of Saturday's game in Chicago, and Perkins doesn't look like he'll be able to
Unlikely.
go either. So do you think that with the performance that Simonin put in the first game, there's less of an urgency to rush guys like Perkins back?
I think especially against Chicago, and you have the bye week next week as well. So it's good to get these guys. I mean, Perkins, I think a lot of it has to do with traveling from the turf and the grass, and then you know how bad the turf is at BC Place in Vancouver, and I think
the turf here is great though.
the turf here is all right, but I hear at BC Place it's quite bad. Yep. So that had to have an effect on both of these guys, and you just want to get them healthy. And if Clément Simonin and Nick Hagelin showed enough last week, which I think they did, and they can shore up the crossing problem that they've had, I think they'll be all right, especially against a Chicago team that's pretty undermanned.
Now, the biggest concern was the crossing. I mean, we've seen the goal, the identical goal that we talked about on the last podcast several times. You actually just asked Greg about it. What was his response, and what did you think? Were you satisfied with his reaction to what you asked?
Yeah, he said it pretty eloquently, that it's not just one thing that's the problem when they're having problems defending crosses. It's partially the midfield, allowing runners to come into the box unattended and creating a numbers mismatch, and it's also the crosses coming in uncontested, which is a problem we saw in both goals, really. So it's a process, and you can tell that Vanney knows exactly what the problem is and knows that it's more than just one single thing that's causing the problem, and they're working to fix it. And you'll have to see in the next few games if there's growth, if there is progress in them defending the cross.
All right, we're going to throw to our interview with Clément, and we're going to be back in about 10 minutes?
Yeah.
All right, Clément, you made your Major League Soccer debut last week after playing for TFC 2 the week before. Did you notice a big level of difference between the USL and Major League Soccer?
Yes, I think there was a pretty interesting gap between those two levels, but jumping in the game, after a couple of minutes I realized I could do it, so I mean, nothing incredible.
Talk about the partnership between you and Nick Hagelin, both youngsters on the team. You guys look pretty good out there. Thoughts working with him?
Yeah, it's been great. He's a more physical guy and more, I would say, more technical, and like with a lot of communication, we deal with a lot of good situation, me and him. So I think that was a good partnership for that game for sure.
So you go from getting drafted, get signed to the USL team, and like a week later you're on the big club. Mm-hmm. Like, can you describe the roller coaster of emotions you've had?
It's been like a incredible past 3 months, I would say, because like I kind of decided to quit soccer after graduation, and just the draft came, then USL, then MLS. So it's been like very interesting and exciting to do with all those news coming in my life, and I've been handling it pretty well.
Well, were you surprised at how high you were drafted in the first round?
Yeah, very surprised. I wasn't expecting to get drafted, or maybe late 4th round, or like maybe something like that, and I saw like number 9 was just like crazy to me.
You had a partner that I remember the draft, and there was a lot of people talking, pundits, and I guess you could call them, and they were saying you weren't even the top NC State defender to be drafted.
Yeah.
How was your partner, and how did you guys kind of grow up together at NC State?
You mean Connor Donovan?
Yeah.
We only played one fall together. He got here at NC State in the fall. I got here in preseason injured from my PDL season, so I played 3 games and then decided to shut down, get surgery. So I played maybe 3-4 games with him. That's about it. But we could have made a pretty good partnership for sure as well.
Life in Canada, how you liking the country?
I love it. Toronto is a dynamic city. A lot to do over here, a lot of activities. A little bit cold so far, but it's getting much better now. I'm getting used to it much better.
What was your background like? Because you grew up in France, I take it. So how did you end up over here, and where did you train when you were younger?
I grew up playing in the FC Lorient Academy. It's a team in Ligue 1, so I went through U12 to the reserve team, then got cut. Went from there to play in the 5th division in a smaller club, amateur. And at some point I was just bored in my life, so I took the chance to go in the US to study college, get the chance to live in the US, learn English, and play decent level soccer. So played 4 years in college and worked my way up in the US soccer and got here today.
I heard you're quite the FIFA player, having beat Quinlan Roberts a couple days ago. What's your go-to team in FIFA?
Go-to team? It's PSG, always, no matter what.
Do you have a favorite player on PSG?
When it takes Zlatan, it makes everything easier, for sure. But I like Lucas, he can dribble, pace, it's very interesting to play with him.
Now, I don't know if you know this, but your current rating in the game is 56. You went up from 50, though, so you did go up 6.
That's interesting.
Hagelin 64, Caldwell 64. What do you think you should be?
I'll stick with 56. I like this number. That's the number of my state in France, so I'll keep 56. It's great for me.
That's perfect. Now, this club has a big rivalry with Montreal, and I guess you kind of missed out on it with the USL Pro team, but whenever the fixture does come around with Montreal this year, you're going to have an advantage on your fellow teammates knowing the French language. You're going to show them around the city. I guess it'll be your first time there too.
That would be my first time there. I'll make sure I can translate them the good things the Montreal talk to us.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to actually visit and play over there. That would be a good experience too.
That was the quickest 10 minutes you've ever seen.
I wouldn't want you setting stoppage time for games, because that was not 10 minutes whatsoever.
2 minutes later, the whistle blows. But let's look ahead to Chicago. Big game for Toronto FC. I mean, I'd hesitate to call it a must-win, but it almost has that feeling so early in the season already.
Well, it's not a must-win. It's too early to say that, 4th game of the season. But it's big because you still have 4 road games coming up before you get the home opener. So this game is something that you probably circled before the season started, knowing that Chicago is probably one of the lesser lights of this league, and you want to circle it and say this is a game that we probably need 3 points in, especially with the 7-game road trip. So I think TFC it's not a must-win, but it's certainly one that they want to win and they feel like they need to win to start get this ball rolling before they return home. And it's also, Chicago, they're not an easy team to beat at home. As much as we call them one of the lesser lights, they hardly lost at home. They just have a knack of getting draws. So for TFC to get a win here, it's going to be a big deal, I think, for the season going forward.
Yeah, and the last time I was in Chicago, Michael Bradley was there with Roma at Soldier Field, which seems like, not Soldier Field, Wrigley Field, which seems like a lifetime ago now. Having those American internationals back, we saw Josie Altidore, Michael Bradley. Do you think they're going to be fatigued coming from Europe? And I mean, can we expect them to be at the level that we've expected them and seen them play at before?
It's tough. I think, if it's mid-season, it's a little bit different because they are in mid-season fitness. I think this international break coming so early in the season for them, it might seem a little bit fatigued. But I don't know. I've watched Michael Bradley for quite some time now. The guy never seems fatigued, so I don't know what else to say. The guy is like an Energizer bunny. He is just going and going and going. That engine never stops. And I know you called him Chicago's second son, did you there?
But, producer Boston.
I think in the scrum he said Toronto is his home now, so
which was
I
a great answer.
It was a good answer, and he is like we've talked about, and he is just so in love with being this team's captain and being the face of this franchise, and it's something that I don't think Torontonians really latch onto enough.
Yep. No, and he's definitely embellished that role, or he's taken on that role of captain and done a great job. But before we end this, I got to ask you about Luke Moore because we heard earlier the week that he was suspended, which just, we're going to bite our tongue on that one. Suspended, though. Thoughts? And will we see, Bright DK get that opportunity? We heard Greg Vanney mention him a little bit. Robert Finley. Who do you want to see out there partnering Altidore up top?
I think it's Altidore and Finley. Seemed to be a good connection in the first game, and in the first half against Columbus they did create some chances. I think DK showed well in his substitute appearance against Real Salt Lake, and Vanney talked about it a little bit, that he's maybe, if he can continue that, get a couple more substitute appearances, keep showing well, he'll earn a bigger role for himself on this team.
All right, I think we got to go because I think we're being kicked off the field for TFC 2 to start practicing. Marco D'Onofrio,
Dan Riccio,
TFC Pitchside.